theyeshiva.net.
We're up to Tes Zayin Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the bottom. Utlushin mi machshirin. Okay, Tes Zayin Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the bottom. Utlushin mi machshirin. So in the previous shir, in the previous Gemarah on Tes Zayin Amud Aleph, we explored the argument between Rav and Shmuel in understanding the famous testimony of Yosef ben Yoezer Ish Tzreida, who said that the liquid that flowed in the butchering home, in the butchering section of the Beis HaMikdash were pure. Rav said, mamish pure, no tumah whatsoever, mamish pure. Which means, as the Gemarah says, that he holds that the whole tumah of liquid is only rabbinic. And therefore the rabbis can be selective and say, here yes, here not, and in the Beis HaMikdash we're canceling the entire concept, and therefore the liquids in the Beis HaMikdash, in the butchering section, the Beis HaMitbachayim, are not going to be tameh. Wow, that's like a big chiddush. So that means even if tumah touches the blood and touches the water, it does not become tameh, which of course saved so many karbonos from tumah, because the liquids cannot become tameh. This is the shita of Rav. And the shita of Shmuel is that Yosef ben Yoezer was not so extreme. What he was saying is that in the Beis HaMikdash, the liquid would not transfer tumah. The liquid itself can become tameh, but it can't transfer tumah. He holds that the transferring of the tumah is rabbinic, and because the transferring of the tumah is rabbinic, therefore the rabbis can be selective and say, in the Beis HaMikdash not, in other places but the tumah itself of liquid is biblical because there's a pasuk for it, and therefore they cannot cancel that in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemarah explained that the pasuk does say in Parshas Shmini that any food or drink that falls into the keli of cheres, where there was a dead sheretz, becomes tameh. But Rav explains the pasuk differently. He doesn't say every food that is eaten becomes tameh, and every drink that is drunk in every vessel becomes tameh. But rather it means every food that is eaten that gets wet with water, or any drink that's drunk in every vessel and it makes the food wet, it becomes tameh. In other words, the tumah of mashkin that the Torah is describing is not the mashkin themselves, but the fact that the mashka makes the oichel susceptible to tumah. And the Gemarah explained, what's the yitma twice according to Rav? According to Shmuel, I understand why it says yitma. 2 separate tumahs. There's the tumah of oichel, and there's the tumah of mashka. And of course, even according to Shmuel, we need to use the words to teach us that every liquid could make food susceptible to tumah. Because how do we know not only water, other liquids as well? And the answer is because the pasuk says, Mikala oichel asher ye'achel, all the food that gets eaten, asher yuval of mayim, that water is on it, u'michal mashka asher yishasa b'chol kli yitma, and any liquid of any keli will become tameh. So it teaches me 2 things. Number 1, that any other liquid can also make it susceptible to tumah. But the yitma at the end teaches me that the liquid itself can become tameh. But according to Rav, no, the 2 yitmas are all to tell me different types of water that can make food susceptible to tumah. There's water that's connected, meaning water that is in a natural reservoir of water in a cistern, or in a wellspring, or a river, or a lake, or a brook, or a canal, or a stream. This is water that's connected, so to speak, to the ground, to the earth. That's called mechubaron, which is the natural habitat of water. And you may think that is the water you need to wetten the food to make it susceptible to tumah, because that is water in its natural, distinct, and unique place. That's where it has its chashivas. That is its natural, organic place. If the water is in a keli, detached, so to speak, that water cannot make the oichel be mekabel tumah. Or you could say also the opposite, that when it's in a keli, it means that I really chose it, and I therefore took it out from its natural place, and I really want this water. But if it's in a natural, if it falls into a river, say, my cherry falls into a river, even if I wanted that, it's not ready for mekabel tumah, the kabbalas tumah. That's why you need the 2 yitmas. The first yitma of mayim, the oichel asheyachel shival of mayim yitma, and then v'chol mashka sheyishasa b'chol kli yitma, that even mashka, including water, in a keli which is detached, also allows the oichel to become tameh. Okay, Asks the Gemarah, Uslushin mi machshirin? Do you really believe that detached water can make food susceptible to tumah? So that means if I have water in a cup and I throw my grape into the water, or I pour that water on the grape, do you really believe that that grape is susceptible to makabel tumah? That's really what you're saying? That by mayim, even tlushim works? What's the problem? And let's note, the question is on water, because by water there's a difference between water in its natural habitat and water that's detached from its natural habitat. Other liquids, we don't have this question because there's no natural habitat. What's the natural habitat for milk? In the udder, it's tlushin, it's in the udder of the cow, right? Or honey in a beehive, right? Or oil in an olive and you press it. I mean, it's not like, so therefore it's always detached, so to speak. So over there, there's no distinction. And the Torah says that other liquids make food susceptible to makabel tumah. The question is on water. What's the problem? Well, you're right. Yeah. So are you going to tell me that tlushin amachshir? Rabbi Yossi said in the name of Rabbi Chanina, a fascinating halacha. Mashkin beis mitbachaya, the liquids in the butchering section of the Beis Hamikdash, loy dayan shein dachan. Not only are they pure, they remain ritually pure. Ela she'ein machshirin. Rabbi Yossi says it was such a radical situation that the liquids that flowed in the butchering section of Beis Hamikdash can't make food susceptible to be makabel tumah. So if there was a piece of meat that got wet with water or blood, say, over there in the Beis Hamikdash, that meat could not become tumah because it never got wet. It has to get wet from a different liquid, not from the liquid in the Beis Hamikdash. Now, 1 second. If detached water can make food susceptible to be makabel tumah biblically, how can the rabbis cancel this halach in the Beis Hamikdash? So you have to say that biblically only water that's attached to the ground could make food susceptible to the makabel tumah. It's the rabbis who added a decree and a stringency that any water, even detached water, could make food susceptible to the makabel tumah. And then we can understand that in the Beis Hamikdash, they said we're not doing it. But if it's a biblical halacha that all water makes food susceptible to the makabel tumah, the rabbis don't have a power to cancel that and eliminate a clear biblical mitzvah. It's not in the Beis Hamikdash, it's off. You don't have permission to do that. They don't have that spiritual authority to change a halacha. So we have to assume that the whole notion that water that's detached could make food susceptible to tumah is a rabbinic notion. And that's why Rabbi Yossi says in the Beis Hamikdash, it didn't exist. We have a pasuk that what? The pasuk says, Mikol ha'oichel asher ye'achel, asher yavei alav mayim. Water. What type of water? I don't know. Okay. V'chol mashke asher yishasa b'chol kli. Mashke, and any liquid that's drunk in any keli, it's in a vessel. Yitma. So we learned 2 ways. Either you can learn yitma means it becomes tameh, or Rav said yitma means what? It makes the food tameh. And Rav said that the second yitma teaches you that even water in a keli makes it susceptible to tumah. Asks the Gemarah, there's a flaw here, there's a problem. Because the Tana, Rabbi Yossi taught us that the liquids in the Beis HaMikdash can't make food susceptible to makabel tumah. That means that water that's detached, making food susceptible, is only a rabbinic gzeira. It's not a biblical thing. If that's the case, mayim tlushin would not be something that makes oichel tameh min ha-Torah. Doesn't make oichel susceptible to min ha-Torah. If that's the case, then the second yitma has to be interpreted like Shmuel, that the liquid itself becomes tameh. Mashke becomes tameh. Now you're only left with one yitma to teach you that what? That water makes food susceptible to makabel tumah, and you're going to say that water means connected water, not detached water. Says the Gemarah, no, because if you say the second yitma is like Shmuel, then it works perfectly. Any food that's eaten, that water is brought on it, the food becomes tameh. That's it you have. Which water? But which water? Mechubarim. Mechubarim. This is Dairaisa. So Rav said, you have a second yitma. Why do you need a second yitma? To teach me mayim tlushin. But I'm proving to you that tlushin is not midaraisa. So what's the second yitma? That liquid itself becomes tameh. Not that it makes oichel tameh. So this is a further proof for Shmuel and a rejection of Rav. A gevalde karaya that the mashke in the Beis HaMikdash was not being machsher food to be mekabel tumah. Zog the Gemarah Tirgum al dam. It's not a question. You can translate the words of Rabbi Yossi referring to blood, not to water. The water does make food be mekabel tumah, even if it's detached. It's dam. Vosepis. Why this distinction? The son of Abba said, name Rabbi Yochanan. How do we know that blood of sacrifices cannot make food susceptible to tumah? Shenemar, the pasuk says about blood. The pasuk says about blood, loy toichlenu, don't eat it. Al ha'oretz tishpechenu kamoyim. Don't eat it. What should you do with it? Pour it out on the ground like water. What does it have to say like water? Al ha'oretz tishpechenu kamoyim. Pour it out on the ground. Don't eat it. Kamoyim, like water. Why? So we learn from here, says Rabbi Yochanan, a fascinating halacha. Listen to this. Dam shenishpach kamayim. Only water that can be poured out on the ground like water. Only blood that can be poured out on the ground like water. Meaning, you don't need to catch it in a vessel. There's no use for it. That's machsher. That's blood that makes food susceptible to tumah. But dam shenishpach kamayim. But blood that cannot be poured out like water, you know why? Because it's the blood of karbonos, and the blood of karbonos, you need a vessel to contain the blood because you need to sprinkle it on the altar. Einay machsher. That blood does not make food susceptible to be mekabel tumah. In other words, ala oris tishpechenu kamayim. You know when blood is like water? Blood is like water if you pour it on the earth. So it's a fascinating halacha. We compare blood to water. It's one of the 7 beverages that we compare to water. So he says, don't eat blood, pour it on the earth like water. When is blood compared to water? When you could pour it on the ground. What if you have to hold it in a keli? It's not like that. Karbonos. Karbonos, you can't just let the blood flow out to the ground. You have to catch the blood because you need to sprinkle it on the blood. So dam, that's nishpach kamayim. Dam, that you could let get lost like mayim, which means dam chulin, regular blood of a mundane animal. You don't have to receive it in a keli when you shech the behema. That blood is compared to water. And therefore, if it's compared to water, just like water makes food susceptible to tumah, there's blood also. But dam she'ein nishpach kamayim, blood that does not get poured out and lost like water, like dam of kachim, which you have to receive in a vessel and put on the mizbeach. Einay machsher. It cannot make food susceptible to mekabel tumah. That's why the pasuk says, "Ala aretz tishpechenu kamayim." You know when blood is like water? When you could just let it pour on the ground and get lost, just move, trickle down and dry up. But if you can't let that happen, it's not like mayim, it's not like water. Ala aretz tishpechenu kamayim. It's like mayim because it's tishpechenu ala aretz. Dam kachim, there's no tishpechenu ala aretz. You stand there with a vessel. That's the source for Rabbi Yochanan's chiddush that what? That dam kachim are not machsher. Ooh, oy bazoi. Rabbi Yossi b'Reb Chanin, it makes a lot of sense when he said that the liquids in the Beis HaMikdash don't make the food susceptible to tumah. He means blood, because blood the Torah excludes explicitly. But water, whether it's attached or detached, could make food susceptible to tumah biblically, even in the Beis HaMikdash. The rabbis taka didn't cancel that. You know why? Because it's a biblical halacha. Blood, the Torah clearly excludes blood. Dam kachim. But mayim, the Torah doesn't exclude. It's talush, it's detached. But Rav believes that even detached water makes food susceptible to be mekabel tumah. Right. We're comparing dam to mayim, beautiful. But when? What type of dam? What do we do with water? What does the Torah describe about water? Yeah? You just let it pour on the ground. And nothing happens. You don't have to hold on to the water. So that's the blood that you compare to water. That blood, when you shecht a regular animal, the blood is tishbechenu kamayim. You don't have to do anything with the blood, and therefore, that's the blood that you compare to water. Maskef Rabbi Shmuel Barami. Rabbi Shmuel Barami asked a big question. Hare dama tamtzis de nishbech kamayim ve'enei machshir. There is a blood called dam hatamtzis. What's dam hatamtzis? Dam hatamtzis is the blood that you cannot use for the mizbeach. This is the trickle of blood. The way he translates it here in English is, dam hatamtzis is, I'll just translate it here. There is the blood that trickles out of an offering before and after the jet of live blood. That unique current of live blood, it's the blood that trickles before and after the jet of live blood. This blood could be spilled on the ground like water. Why? So the halacha is, when an animal is slaughtered, there's different stages in terms of the flow of blood. The blood that trickles out of a slaughtered animal is not suitable for the mizbeach. It's not suitable to place on the mizbeach. Only the live blood, which spurts out in a jet, that's called the live blood, dam hanefesh. That blood that spurts out like a jet, that's the blood that you could put on the mizbeach. Not the dam hatamtzis, which trickles out before and after. It trickles out before and after the jet of live blood that spurts out in a jet. That blood is not kosher for the mizbeach. The reason for that is, like Rashi tells us, the pasuk says in Vayikra, Ki Adam hu banefesh yichaper. For the blood that is of life, that's the blood that atones. The blood, Ki Adam hu banefesh yichaper. The blood that is of the life atones. What's pshat? Only the blood with which the life leaves the animal, the blood with which the life leaves the animal is suitable for kapara. So the blood that trickles out of an offering, you don't have to receive in a vessel. It could be spilled on the ground like water. Which blood do you have to receive in a vessel? Only the blood that spurts out in a jet, right? That's called the blood with which the soul leaves the animal. That blood, that when that blood flows, it represents the fact that the life of the animal ended. That blood, so to speak, which carries the soul, with which the soul leaves the animal, that you put on the mizbeach. Not the blood before and after, which is not called the blood with which the life leaves the animal. That's the pshat. Hadam hu ba'nefesh yichaper. I guess when it starts to cut, there's a trickle, but the soul didn't leave with that blood. And then there's the jet of, that's the lifeblood with which the nefesh goes out. So that's the dam that you bring on the mizbeach. So the dam atamtzis, what's the halacha? It's nishbech kamayim. It could be spilled on the ground like water. Nonetheless, ve'enoi machshir. But it doesn't generate susceptibility to tumah. When Rabbi Yosef Reb Chanina said that the liquids in the Beis HaMitbachayim don't make the food susceptible to makabel tumah, he didn't differentiate between blood, any blood that's there, any blood that's on the behemoth. That means even the dam hatamtzis. But this blood is nishbech kamayim, because you don't have to put it on the mizbeach. Nonetheless, what does he say? It's not machshir. It's part of the mashke Beis HaMitbachayim. So you can say that that's the reason. We explain that the reason that the dam is not machshir is because al ta'ar it's tishbechenu kamayim. This is not tishbechenu kamayim. But this dam is tishbechenu kamayim. If it's tishbechenu kamayim, so then why is it not machshir? Unless you say, of course, because the whole idea that water that's detached is not machshir also. What's the source for this idea? Amalei Reb Zera hanach l'dam hatamtzis da afilu b'chulin nami loy machshir. Leave the dam hatamtzis. Even by chulin it wouldn't be machshir. Wow. Even by a regular animal. Why? Kiblu minei b'shmuel barami. Shmuel barami received the explanation from Reb Zera. The Amar Rachmana the Torah says in Dvarim, rak chazak lebilti echel adam ki adam hu nefesh. Be strong. Don't eat blood. Do you know why? Hadamu nefesh. The blood is the soul, meaning the blood is the lifeline of the animal. So we learn from this, dam sha nefesh yoytze by karudam. Dam she'ena nefesh yoytze by karudam. The blood with which you could say that the soul leaves the animal with this blood, the life of the animal ceases with this blood, that's called blood. Hadam hu nefesh. Which blood are we talking about? The blood that carries the soul. That spurt of blood, that jet, that spurting out of blood with which the soul leaves, the life leaves, that's called blood. Hadam hu nefesh. Dam she'ena nefesh yoytze ba, but the dam atamtz is the blood that trickles before and after. Eino karu dam, that's not called dam. If it's not called dam, so then it's not, doesn't make food susceptible to be makabel tumah. Does nothing to do with kachim. Dama tamtis is a din in all of karbonis. Dama tamtis will not make it susceptible to be makabel tumah. Why? Because for dam to make something susceptible to be makabel tumah, it has to be called dam. How do we know that the other liquids make it susceptible to tumah? Because the Torah says v'chol mashka, any liquid. So we have to have references in Tanakh what is called a mashka. So the Chazal scanned the whole Tanakh and they found 6 liquids that are called mashka, that are referred to as liquids. For example, honey, dew, oil, milk, blood. Blood, it says in Balak, v'dam chalolim yishta.
But not damatam.
He will drink the blood of the slain. So we learn from here that yishta, drink. But this pasuk tells us a chiddush. What's the definition of dam? Definition of dam is that it has the soul in it, so to speak. It's the lifeline. It's the lifeline. And when that blood leaves, the soul leaves with it. That's the definition of dam. And therefore another dam doesn't have the definition of dam, hu nefesh. What we say that blood don't eat, and therefore it also doesn't have the definition of mashka, which is when the Torah calls something dam. What's called dam? Not dam atamtis, and therefore it's not machshir. So dam atamtis has nothing to do with karbonis. By karbonis, the idea is Allah aretz tishbechenu kamoyim, that what's going on the mizbeach is not called dam, it's not like mayim, and it's not machshir. That's the halacha of Rabbi Yossi. This halacha of dam atamtis is a different halacha. The dam atamtis is not called dam. So Remele, Rav's position could still be maintained that what? Detached water still makes food susceptible to makabel tumah. I base on it b'chayim, it doesn't. That's a unique halacha about dam that the Torah excludes specifically. Dam atamtis anywhere, and dam kachim, the regular dam one nefesh by karbonis, because it's not teshbechenu ka moya. Midoraisa, it seems not. Midoraisa, it seems that dam is not the problem. Good question. We call it dam atamtis. I guess we call it dam atamtis. In other words, you need the blood with which the life leaves the animal. That's considered the blood. Dam hu nefesh of chulin. Yeah. No, that's any blood. By a chaya and an oiv, there's a separate din of kisui hadam. Any blood. Right. Dam atamtis not. Right. Okay. So the Gemarah maintains Rav's position could be maintained. Toshma, however, we have another proof that challenges Rav that liquid is not susceptible to tumah min ha-Torah. Rav believes that biblically liquid is not makabel tumah. Certainly it can't transfer tumah. Rabbinically it's makabel tumah, but biblically he beholds it's not makabel tumah. When the pasuk speaks about liquid, it's only talking about making food susceptible to tumah. The Gemarah is now going to raise 3 challenges to Rav from brises that are all similar, that deal with a particular unique reality that sometimes happen in the Beis HaMikdash. Rav's position is that liquid biblically never is makabel tumah. It can't be makabel tumah. It's something that's immune to tumah. Rabbinically it could, but not biblically. The pasuk says liquid in every keli should become tameh, meaning liquid in a keli makes the food tameh if it gets wet with those liquids or with water. Detached water attached. The liquid itself is not makabel tumah min ha-Torah. That's Rav's shit. And therefore in the Beis HaMikdash, it was completely tahar, the liquid. It never became tameh. Even if somebody was mamish tameh, even if there was a sheretz that touched the liquid, it wouldn't become tameh. Certainly wouldn't pass on to him. Nothing happens. That was Rav's shit. Either rabbi said it does become tameh, not in the Beis HaMikdash, because they wanted to protect the karbonis from tumah as much as possible. Right? That was Rav's shit. Shmuel had a different shit. Shmuel said, no, biblically it does get tameh. It just can't transfer tumah min ha-Torah only rabbinically in the Beis HaMikdash. They therefore made it more lenient that it shouldn't transfer tumah. It becomes tumah, but it doesn't transfer tumah. They wanted to save karbonas. Hefset kachim. Well, for example, you have a mincha mixed with oil, right? If the oil gets tameh, so that's done. You can't eat it. But you're eating oil.
Oh, it's mixed together.
It's mixed, yeah. If it's mixed with a liquid, then it would disqualify it. So it's a much greater protection. Okay. We have a very interesting halacha known as tzitz miratza. Tzitz miratza means there was a what is it called? The tzitz. How do they translate it? The head plate, the plate on the forehead of the kohen. Well, midirabonan. You're right. Only midirabonan. Okay, but midirabonan is a serious tumah. Even Rav holds that mashki be mekabel tumah midirabonan, just not min haTorah. So Rav holds that in the Beis HaMikdash they completely cancelled it. That there's no tumah in order to protect the kachim. In the karbonis in the Beis HaMikdash. But outside of the Beis HaMikdash Chaim, there was tumah and mashkin. In the Beis HaMikdash, that's how he teaches. The rabbis did not make this gzeira in the Beis HaMikdash. Right. Yeah. The truma that becomes tummy would be outside of the Beis HaMikdash. The Kohen Gadol wore what we call a tzitz, a head plate. Okay? The pasuk says about the tzitz something very, very interesting in Parshas Tetzaveh, and that is, I'm going to quote the pasuk because this is going to be the context behind the next piece of Gemara. V'hoya al meitzach Aaron, it says in Parshas Tetzaveh. It should be on the forehead of Aaron, a head plate. It was a golden head plate that was tied to his head. It was under his tefillin, on the forehead. It said two words engraved, Kodesh Lashem, engraved in this gold. And the Torah says something unique about this garment that he wore, this head plate, this piece of jewelry, that V'nasa Aaron es avoin hakotchim. With this, Aaron carries the sin of the offerings, Asher Yagdishu B'nai Yisrael, which the Jewish people sanctify. And it should always be on his forehead, V'hoya al mitzchay tamid l'ratzen lahem l'fnei Hashem. To be a will, to be appeasing for them, create will for them before God. This is Parshas Tetzaveh, Perik Chavches, Pasuk Lamed Ches. Numbers 28, verse 38. The rabbis now had to tune into this. What does it mean that the head plate carries the sin of offerings? What sin of offering? What does it carry? Carry means like it atones, like somehow there's a sin and the tzitz says, don't worry, no sin. What does it mean? There are things the Torah, for example, punishes with kares. Somebody eats pigel. A kohen has a thought while he's doing a carbon that he's going to sprinkle the blood in the wrong place or in the wrong time. It disqualifies the carbon. Or I'm going to eat it in the wrong place or in the wrong time. Or I'm going to burn the fat in the wrong place or in the wrong time. I'll sprinkle the blood tomorrow instead of today. Right? Or I'll sprinkle the blood in Bnei Brak instead of in the Beis HaMikdash. Or I'm going to eat the offering in a week instead of tonight. Or I'm going to burn the fat in 3 days on the Mizbeach instead of today. All this disqualifies the carbon. You're not allowed to eat it. Sometimes it's even a serious penalty. It's not forgiving, you're not allowed to eat it. So what does it exactly mean? If a kohen is tameh, it says he's not allowed to eat the carbon. If the meat is tameh, he's not allowed to eat the carbon. We learned habasar sheyiga b'chol tam b'eish yisarav. What is this sin that the tzitz atones for? What? What type of sin? What are we talking about? That you could just ignore it and move on. What is this? Something that the tzitz does. And they were looking everywhere. What the Torah says you're not allowed to do, you're not allowed to do. You can't say it was canceled. One thing. What is that one thing? If the blood becomes tameh. If the blood becomes tameh, you're not eating the blood, but you're sprinkling it on the mizbeach. So the chiddush is that even though the blood is tameh, and the kohen sprinkles it on the altar, it's tameh dika blood. Nonetheless, the carbon is valid. That's what the tzitz creates. The tzitz creates this tremendous chiddush that even though the carbon was offered with tumah, meaning the blood became impure, and you sprinkle it on the altar, it's not a problem. It's a fine carbon. You fulfilled your obligation. You can burn the fat on the mizbeach. You can eat the karbonis. And you could take blood. It's a gavaldi. You could take blood. It's tameh. And you could put it on the mizbeach. Why? Because the tzitz is meratza. That's the avoyna kachim that the tzitz is meratza for. That's the chiddush.
That was the whole reason for the tzitz, according to this.
The pasuk says, "V'hoya al meitzach Aaron v'nasa Aaron es avoyna kachim asher yagdishu b'nei Yisrael l'chol matnas kachayim v'hoya al mitzchay tamid l'rotzen lehem l'fnei Adonai." Numbers 28:38. So what is this? What is this teaching? It teaches me a unique chiddush that if the blood becomes tameh, you would think it's all over, throw out the blood, the carbon is disqualified, and go bring a new carbon. No. This is what the tzitz atoned for. You could take the blood, sprinkle it on the mizbeach, and the whole carbon is kosher. Once you sprinkle the blood, you can burn the fat on the mizbeach, you can eat the meat that you have to eat. It's all good. Parshas Tetzaveh. Oh, I said Numbers. I'm sorry. Exodus. I stand corrected. Exodus. Shmois. Okay. The Chachamim said an interesting gzeira. And that is, the Chachamim said that if it was done willingly, then they made a penalty on the person that he shouldn't eat the meat. Even if the blood was sprinkled, if it was done willingly, if the tumah was done willingly, or the sprinkling was done willingly, there's two ways of learning it, they made a knas that he shouldn't eat the meat because it was done willingly. The tumah was done willingly. Okay. They still didn't make him bring another carbon. That they can't. You know why? Because that would be making him bringing chulin la'azara. Because if he's yotze with this carbon and you have him bring a new animal, you're offering a mundane animal as a carbon. The Chachamim can't do that. What they did do was they said don't eat the meat in this case. In other words, we treat it as though the carbon was disqualified, even though it atoned for him, he doesn't bring another carbon. So the Gemarah says, Tashma, if you have dam, blood, shenitma, it became impure, uzrakai b'shaygeg, and the kayin sprinkles it inadvertently. Hurtza, the carbon is good, and the person is atoned, and he can eat the meat, because the tzitz covers the problem. But b'mezid, if it was done willingly, let's say he made it tameh willingly, loy hurtza, then you're not allowed to eat the meat anymore. Not good. Min HaTorah, it's still good, by the way. The Chachamim made a penalty since he made the blood tameh b'mezid, that it disqualifies him from eating the meat, or anybody from eating the meat, even though he sprinkled the blood on the mizbeach, and biblically the carbon is good, which is why they will not make the person bring a new carbon, because that they don't have a koyach for. The rabbis can't tell you to take chulin and make it a carbon and be makal beis hamikdash, because that's violating mamash mitzvah of the Torah. Torah says you're not allowed to do it, and they say, no, you're allowed to do it. Torah says you're not allowed to eat chaza, they say you're allowed to eat chaza. Torah says this carbon was good, you don't have to bring another carbon. They could give you a knas not to eat the meat for doing it b'mezid. That, yeah, that's the halach. What do we see from here right away? We see from here right away that the blood became tameh. He says, dam shenitma, blood became tameh. 1 second. Which blood was this? This was dam of karbonis, mashka of beis hamikdash Chaim, is makabel tumah. Why? Because obviously liquid is susceptible to tumah min HaTorah. It's beis hamikdash Chaim, it's still tameh. Why? Because it's biblical. The rabbis can't cancel tumah of liquids. Yosef ben Eliezer said mashka of beis hamikdash Chaim is not tameh. Obviously he meant it doesn't transfer tumah, but it becomes tameh itself. You see that the blood becomes tameh here. This refutes the shit of Rav, that Yosef ben Eliezer held that blood is not makabel tumah because it's kabbalas mashkin. Tumah is only midrabanan. The Gemarah says you have no proof midrabanan. Maybe this Bryce is talking about rabbinically. The blood became tameh midrabanan. Udeloi ki Yosef ben Eliezer ish tzreida. And this Tana holds that even in the Beis HaMikdash Chaim, it remains tameh, not like Yosef ben Eliezer who said that the Chachamim did not make the blood in the Beis HaMikdash Chaim be susceptible to tumah. He holds that the blood could become tameh. And by the way, the Gemarah could have also answered, as Tosfos says, that this Braisa follows the shitta that mashkin could become tameh min HaTorah. So it's fine, even min HaTorah becomes tameh. You could say that also. There's that shitta, right? The shitta of Reb Meir. Mashkin becomes tameh min HaTorah. But the Gemarah wants to say, even according to Rav, who holds that mashka is not makabel tumah min HaTorah, this Mishnah, this brisa still works, The dam is mekabel tumah midirabbanon, and that's a problem, and that's why they told you, if it becomes tamei b'mezid, don't sprinkle it and don't eat it, and they give you a knas if you do sprinkle it not to eat it, but it's all midirabbanon, minat Torah, you're right. It would be not tamei, you're right. So even according to Rav, this brisa works. The only thing is that unlike Rav, who said that Yosef ben Yezer said that dam is not mekabel tumah at all in Beis Hamikveh Chaim, here we see it is mekabel tumah. Even if it's the rabbis did impose the tumah in the Beis Hamikdash. According to Rav, only midirabban. You're right. So you want to know that tzitz is the cha'inyan of biblical, the tzitz miratza, right, is biblical. That's a good question. Wait a moment. Toshma, another brayse, weiteres question. A brayse says, Al maha tzitz miratza. What does the tzitz appease for? What does the tzitz atone for? Al hadam, blood. Al habasa, meat. Al hachela, fat. Shenitma, which become tameh. Bein b'shoigig, unwillingly. Bein b'mezid, willingly. Bein ba'oinus, whether it was ba'oinus, meaning it was coerced. Bein b'ratzin, whether with you with volition. Bein b'yachid, whether it was an individual carbon. Bein b'tzibur, it was a communal carbon. In all these cases, the tzitz does a tremendous function of atonement. That what? That if blood becomes tameh, the tzitz allows me and says, go sprinkle the blood lichatchila, right? The rabbi said, don't sprinkle it lichatchila. Don't. The rabbi said don't because it became tameh. But the tzitz says minat Torah that it's fine. B'di'evid, if I did sprinkle it, the tzitz is meratza and the carbon is kosher. So minat Torah, even if the tzitz is there and the dam is tameh, it works. The rabbi said don't sprinkle it. If you did, b'di'evid, the carbon is kosher and you can eat it. When it comes to meat and fat, that's not essential to the carbon, right? In other words, what you need for a carbon to be successful is that the blood should go on the altar. Once the blood is in the altar, you fulfilled the carbon. Nobody's going to say that the tzitz allows that if the fat became tameh, you could burn it on the mizbeach. Or if the meat became tameh, you can eat it. The Torah clearly says that you're not allowed to eat meat that's tameh. You cannot argue with that. Nobody says the meat becomes tameh, you can eat the meat. What we say is, if the blood became tameh, minat Torah, you could sprinkle the blood, and even midrabbanan, if you sprinkled it b'di'evid, you could still eat the meat. But if the meat became tameh, then you have a problem. You can't do anything with that meat. If the fat became tameh, you can't put it on the mizbeach. The tzitz will not allow you to cancel out that tumah. But you know what? It's not a big deal. Why? Because offering the meat, eating the meat and offering the fat are not essential to the carbon. They're just accessories. So you're done. Once the blood is sprinkled, even if the meat became tameh, I fulfilled the mitzvah. The main thing is that the dam went to the mizbeach, and that's what the tzitz accomplishes. The tzitz atones for that, which without it, the carbon would be pasul, which is the sprinkling of the blood. That's what the tzitz does. Once the blood is sprinkled, the carbon is fine. Either meat is tameh, so don't eat it. Either fat is tameh, so don't be makriv on the mizbeach. But the main thing is that now the carbon is good. You don't have to bring another one. Why? Because the blood was sprinkled on the mizbeach. And if you did sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach, the carbon is good. But the yavid, why? Because you have a tzitz, and you don't have to bring another carbon. When the brayse says that the tzitz atones for the basar and the chaylev that becomes tameh, Rashi says it's talking about there was a shita of Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua held that if you don't have any meat or fat left, let's say it all got lost somewhere, or it went out of Yerushalayim, it went out of the mechitza, then you're not allowed to sprinkle the blood and there's no carbon. Rabbi Yeshua held if there's no basar and no emun, let's say it got lost or went out from the place where it has to be, let's say the meat went out of Yerushalayim or the fat went out of the Azara, so then you can't sprinkle the blood. So the Bryce is saying that that's only if they left their confines when they got lost. But if they got tameh, the tzitz will still do the job that what? It's as though there's fat and meat that you could sprinkle the blood. That's the chiddush. So what do we see here? That if the blood becomes tameh, the tzitz atones. Even if the meat becomes tameh and the chaylev becomes tameh, all of it. Don't think it means that there's no meat, there's no chaylev, you can't sprinkle the blood. There is. Because in terms of tumah, the tzitz atones it. Doesn't atone it that you can eat the meat, but it atones that what? That you could sprinkle the blood. Minatayri, you could l'chatchila sprinkle the blood of a carbon and it's all good. Even the Chachamim said you shouldn't sprinkle it, but if you did, you're good. If you did it b'mezid, then they made a knas that you shouldn't eat the meat, but the carbon is still good. That's the chiddush of tzitz miratz. And as we see here, it's b'shoigig, it's b'mezid, it's b'oinus, it's b'rotzen, it's yachid, tzibur, no matter what. The previous brayso we said only b'shoigig, not b'mezid. So Rashi explains you could learn it in two ways. B'shoigig would mean the tumah happened b'shoigig, even if the sprinkling was b'mezid, so it still works. That's what b'mezid means. Or the other way around, that the tumah happens b'mezid, even if the sprinkling happens b'shoigig. In other words, you could learn, when did the Chachamim give you the knas? If you made the tumah b'mezid. That's the bottom line. But if the tumah was b'shoigig, I don't care if you sprinkle it b'mezid. That's why it says mezid here. Or you could say the other way around. There's two ways of learning it. That what? If the sprinkling was b'shoigig, I don't care. Even if the tumah was b'mezid. If the sprinkling was b'mezid, then I care. There's two ways of learning it to reconcile the first brayso and the second brayso. But what's the bottom line in everything? The bottom line in everything is dam is makabel tumah. We see from here dam is makabel tumah, and therefore tumah smashkin is min ha-Torah, and that's why even the dam of kachim in the Beis Hamikveh Chaim is makabel tumah, not like Rav who said the dam is not makabel tumah in Beis Hamikveh Chaim because he holds it's not min ha-Torah. So the Gemara says again, no, midirabonon. You could say this is rabbinic, Udeloike Yosef ben Yezer Tzreida, and again, not like Yosef, who he holds that the rabbis didn't make a gzeira of tumah in the Beis Hamikdash, and here there is a gzeira of tumah, and the dam is only tameh midirabonon. Back to your question, so what do you need a tzitz for? If the whole din is a din derabonon, so what does the Torah speak about a tzitz when the Torah is not even goyres that there's a tumah?
Maybe that it's going to work.
In the Beis Hamikdash, the Kohen Gadol wore it, huh?
The chiddush is that it's going to work. The chiddush is that it's going to spray the blood and it's going to, even though it's not.
Okay. So the Moshe says, Toshma, v'nosa Aaron es avoina kachim. Here's the actual pasuk that I was quoting. Aaron will carry and atone for the sin of kachim. So the Brayso says, Eza avoin hu noisei. Tell me, which sin does Aaron atone for with the tzitz? Let's go through it. Avoin pigul? The sin of pigul, meaning, if I bring a carbon, and while I bring the carbon, I haven't thought that I want to do it outside of the right place. I will sprinkle the blood in Bnei Brak, I will burn the fat in New York, and I will eat the meat in Borough Park. There's a pasuk that when somebody has this machshava lo yeratza, this carbon is not atoned. Torah can't contradict itself and says it is atoned. Okay, next. Maybe if I have a thought that I'm going to leave it over, I'm going to eat it in the wrong time, or I'm going to sprinkle the blood in the wrong time, or I'm going to burn the fat in the wrong time. Torah says in Parshas Tzav, lo yechashiv, this carbon is not considered of any value. That means that the tzitz cannot atone for it. So let's go through the scenarios. What does the tzitz accomplish? If I disqualify the carbon through negative thoughts, do it in the wrong place, do it in the wrong time, the Torah says it's disqualified. Maybe it means something else. Maybe it means, let's say, a kohen is tameh, and he eats the carbon. Is that really what's happening? That the kohen eats the carbon tummy? Whose sin is that? It's not a sin on the carbon, that's a sin on the kohen. Rashi says, avoin hakotshim, a sin of the carbon, not of the kohen. Okay, so give me another idea. The meat is tameh, and you're allowed to eat it. Because there's no sin of carbonas, even though it's tameh. But the Torah says clearly, basar that touches tameh, you have to burn in fire. You can't have Torah contradicting itself. What is the sin of a carbon that Aaron is atoning for? Tell me what? What happened here? If the kohen did it in the wrong way, the Torah says it's not good. There's no atonement for it. Not good, right? If he disqualified the carbon, if he didn't sprinkle the blood, all these things, what is this sin? Something happened here, and we cannot figure out what it is. So the Brayso says, Ella avoin tumah. One thing. It's the avoin tumah. Avoin tumah means that something became tameh. What is it that became tameh? The avoin tumah. What's avoin tumah? That the blood becomes tameh. Vas epis. Why would this tumah suddenly be atoned for? Why, when the blood becomes tameh, is it atoned for? Why did this not become a serious thing? So he says, Shahutra miklala b'tzibur. Because we see that with tumah, the Torah takes it out from the regular prohibition when it comes to tzibur. Whenever there's a carbon tzibur, if most of the koyanim and most of the tzibur are tameh, you could still be at makriv. It's called tumah hutra b'tzibur. Even without the tzitz, tumah hutra b'tzibur means that when there's a carbon tzibur, a communal carbon, you can bring it with tumah. For example, the carbon Pesach. If most of the Jews are tameh, most of the koyanim are tameh, they can go into the Beis HaMikdash, they can be makrivit b'tumah, they could do everything b'tumah. How could you? You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to walk into the Beis HaMikdash, you're not allowed to be metameh the blood, you're not allowed to be metameh the meat. These are all isurim. The answer is tumah hutra b'tzibur. We learn out carbon tamid, carbon pesach, where it says b'mayada, you have to do it in the right time, b'mayadechem, that you always do it, even if the tzibur and the koyanim are tameh in that time. If most of them are tameh. So we see that tumah is a unique type of prohibition that sometimes the Torah completely cancels out the problem of tumah. That's why there was a view that you could be makriv the carbon pesach b'zman hazeh. If you build a mizbeach, we don't have the para aduma, but since the whole tzibur is tameh, so you get a kohen, he's tameh, and he's makriv the carbon pesach, and he goes into the Beis HaMikdash, and you do everything connected to the carbon pesach, because tumah hutra b'tzibur, carbon pesach is a carbon tzibur. Fascinating halacha. So therefore, hutra miklala b'tzibur, since the Torah by tumah says that by tzibur you can do it even without the tzitz, so by carbon yachid, even though you're not allowed to bring it b'tumah, but the tzitz helps, that what? That if it became tameh, if what became tameh? If the meat becomes tameh, I don't care. Burn it. If the fat becomes tameh, I don't care. Don't burn it. But if the blood becomes tameh, I can't have a carbon because you have to bring it to the altar. That's the key. The chiddush of the tzitz is, it's still good. It's still good. You can apply it. You could be at makriv b'tumah. No, my love, what do we see from here? Tumah's dam. The tzitz is meratza. Which tumah? It says tumah. Which tumah? Tumah of the blood. Which is the part of the carbon that you need to be makriv, and you would have a problem. Not the meat. The meat, if it's tameh, you don't eat it. But it's still a good carbon. If I bring a carbon, the meat gets tameh by mistake, right? You burn it, it's fine. I have to bring another carbon. If the chayil of the fat gets tameh, I can't burn the mizbech, but I have to bring another carbon. But if the blood becomes tameh, and I can't put it on the altar, then I don't have a carbon. Because that's what makes the kapara of the carbon. That's what the Torah says. So the chiddush would be that the blood, even though it's tameh, you could be makriv b'tumah. Why? Because there's a chiddush of tzitz. Why did they choose tumah? What's the havana? Because tumah by tzibur is completely cancelled. So even by yachid, there's the tzitz that creates the ability to be at makriv. Got it? That's tumah. Okay? B'meila. But what do we see from here? Okay, so Rabbi Yeshua holds that if there's no basar at all and no chaylev at all, meaning they left the confinements of where they have to be or they lost, then he holds that you cannot put the dam on the mizbeach. That's what he holds. The tzitz won't help. But the chiddush is, even according to him, if they only become tameh, the tzitz helps. They're still there because they're here. That's why we mentioned before the tumah according to his opinion. But what do we see from here? Isn't the Brisa talking about tumah's dam? Because that's the chelik that needs ritzui. That's the chelik that needs kapara. Without that, the carbon is going to be puzzle. A murim and basar. No, say no. This dam is not tameh. We're talking about the chelev and the basar. Food could become tameh. No, but we know you don't need that for the carbon. So you don't need the tzitz for that. Even if there's no tzitz, if the meat becomes tummy, you don't eat it, but you're still a good carbon. So you have to say that we're talking about the tumah of dam. And that's what the Torah is talking about. Tumah of dam. That means liquid is mekabel tumah min ha-Torah. Amar of Papa Eloi, tumas kmotzim. What's tumas kmotzim? What blood was for an animal, the fistful of flour was for meal offerings, right? If you brought a meal offering, let's say from flour, from wheat, a mincha it's called. The kohen there's a vessel filled with flour mixed with oil. He takes a fistful of the flour, it's called kmitza. That's like blood, so to speak. What you do with an animal, you do with a meal offering. He puts it on the altar and it burns on the altar. That's what. What happens if the koimetz gets tamei? That's oichel. That's not mashke. That's oichel. So what would you say? The carbon is finished. So that's the tzitz. That the tzitz allows you to put the koimetz on the mincha. If the rest of the flour gets tamei, okay, you don't need it. Burn it. But there's no raya that oven tumah is dam. Rav could hold dam is takenat mekabel tumah min atayra. The pasuk is talking about the oven of tumas kmotzim. Because it's not mekabel tumah min atayra, dam. And that's why Yosef ben Eliezer said that even the rabbi said in the Beis HaMikdash, there's no tumah min atayra. So the kapara of the mincha is talui, is depending on the burning of the koimetz on the altar. Just like the kapara of the animal depends on the blood on the altar. Since it's food and not liquid, it's mekabel tumah. And what happens if before you burn it on the altar, the koimetz becomes tamei? A dead mouse falls into that, into the kohen's hand with the koimetz. What happens? You need the tzitz, that if you burn it on the mizbeach, the mincha is kosher and you can eat the rest of it. You can eat, that's the chiddush of the tzitz. You can eat. Again, the chachamim didn't want you to do it. But if you did it, it's kosher. And if you did it b'mezid, they gave you a knas that what? That you shouldn't be allowed to eat the rest of the flour. Does mezid mean you made it tamei b'mezid, or you sprinkled it b'mezid, you put it on the mizbech b'mezid? That is debatable. There's two shittas of the Amiraya.
The nice would be with the blood.
Ah?
The nice would be the law of the blood.
So with the blood, if you say like Rav that dam is not mekabel tumah, so it never happens, never an issue. I don't care what happens. You can have a kohen who's a zav, you can have a shichva zeri, you can have a dead sheretz, it falls right into the keli. Here, I'm a kohen, I shechted it, you're holding a vessel of blood and a dead sheretz falls right into the blood. Rav says nothing happened. Nothing happened. Get rid of it and sprinkle it, it's pure. The chiddush is, if you hold that it's mekabel tumah min atayra, then the dam is tummy, then you need it tzitz. You need it tzitz. That if I take this blood and I sprinkle it, it's a kosher animal. Because according to Rav, you could say for the kmotzim. The Gemarah, of course, also could have answered that the tzitz works for the carbon. We spoke about Rabbi Yeshua, that if all the meat gets tamei and all the fat gets tamei, right? And he holds if that happens, the carbon would be possible, even if the dam is kosher. And that's when you would need the tzitz. But that would be only one opinion. The Gemarah wants that the Braisa should be according to all the opinions, and therefore he uses kmotzim, because kmotzim works. Kmotzim works for everybody. So therefore, Rav was salvaged. All these Braisas that tell me about blood being tummy, including the last one, which is explaining the Chumash. It's explaining the Chumash. It's biblical. The other ones you could say are rabbinic, but this is biblical, like your question. It's still maintained. One last question on Rav. One last question on Rav. Toshma, come in here. Here we come to a fascinating moment in Jewish history. And the background is the Jewish people have 42,000 Jews have ascended from Babylonia in the second Aliyah with Ezra. 42,000 Jews came back from Bavel. That's a very small amount. They want to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash. And what happens is, it's not an easy parsha. The reason it's not an easy parsha is because Cyrus first gave them permission, and then the permission was retracted, and the Jews were stuck. And then there was a king named Daryavesh from the Persian Empire. And some say the son of Esther and Achashverosh, but that's a debatable issue. And Daryavesh gives permission to the Jewish people to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash. One of the prophets living at that time, this is the early Bayesheni period, his name is Chagai. He's from the last prophets of Israel. Chagai, Scharia, Malachi, and his prophecy is recorded in a book Chagai, which is in Trei Asar in the Tanakh. And Chagai, in chapter 2, speaks about the history of the time, and that it was the second year of the reign of Daryavesh. And Daryavesh gave the Jews permission to again continue and finish the completion of the second Beis HaMikdash and get back to life in Eretz Yisrael the way it was during the first Commonwealth. Chagai has a prophecy, and in the prophecy he's told to give an exam to the Kohanim, to test them about the laws of Tumah and Tara, to see if they're apt, if they're competent, if they're capable of starting the Avodah. So he does a double exam. He does a double exam. Basically, it's fascinating. It's like mamish, a teacher testing his students. He does a scenario, because that's how you're supposed to give a test. Not ideas, but, reality. And that's what he does here. He gives them a scenario, and he says, you give the verdict. Most people don't know that in Tanakh, you actually have this. He's giving a test, he gives a scenario, and you give the verdict. And this is the test we're now going to learn. The Gemarah is going to quote this and try to disprove Rav from this. What does Chagai say? We now quote the words of Chagai. The Gemarah quotes the whole pasuk. Chagai turns to the Kohanim and he says, here's the question. Hein yisa ish psar kodesh beknaf bigdai. Somebody is holding on, he's carrying psar kodesh, which, as we're going to see, Rashi says psar kodesh, it doesn't mean sacred meat. It actually means defiled meat. Psar kodesh would mean defiled meat. Why? Because the word kodesh means designated, separated. It could be pure and it could be impure, right? What's our word for a harlot? Loisia kedesha. She's not a very holy person, but kadesh could mean two separate things. So it's designated for impurity, yeah. So like you have a pasuk v'gam kadesh haya ba'aretz. There was impurity in the earth in Melachim Aleph Perik Yudalet. So psar kodesh, Rashi says here, is meat of kodesh, meat of tumah. And the classic example would be a dead sheretz. You have a dead sheretz, one of the 8 shratzim. Its flesh is tameh, and basically yisa ish psar kodesh b'knav bigdai. A person in his cloak, at the corner of his cloak, the rim, the edge, knaf is the. How does he say knaf bigdai? Yeah. The corner of his cloak, he's carrying the meat of a sheretz. V'naga b'chnafei ala lechem. And with this cloak, or with this sheretz in his cloak, he touches bread. Okay? Ve'el hanazid. The bread touches a cooked dish. Okay? Ve'el hayayin. The cooked dish touches wine. Ve'el shemen. And the wine touches oil. Vel kol meichel, or any other food. Hayikdosh. Does this oil or any other food become tameh? Vayanu hakoyanim vayomru, and the koyanim said, loy. Okay, and now we have to do a quiz. Were they right or were they wrong? So let's go through the scenario, okay? We have a sheretz, psar kodesh, basar of tumah. The sheretz is an avatumah, right? It's in my cloak. It touched bread. So the bread becomes a rishon. The bread touched a cooked dish, which is now a sheni. The cooked dish touched wine, which is a shlishi, right? Would it be a shlishi, yeah? The wine touched oil, so what's the oil? A revi. Wine touched oil, became a revi. Or any other food which became a revi. Should this be called tameh or not? The Kohanim say it's not tameh. They say it's not tameh. The last stage, the revi, is not tameh. Right. So you mean the beged itself? You say there's another level. Okay. So the way Rashi is learning it here is that the naga b'knafai means he touched the sheretz to the bread. In other words, he touched with the sheretz that's in the kanaf in the bread. That's how he learns it. In other words, you're saying the naga b'knafai is the beged touched the bread. Right, so that would mean chamishi. That would mean chamishi, because the beged would be another one. The sheretz would touch the beged, and the beged, right. So Rashi learns that the sheretz itself touched the bread. Okay, that's what he says. So they said it's all good. Va'amar Rav, and Rav commented on this story, and he said, Ishtabish kahani. X. They lost the test. Ishtabish kahani. They made a mistake. Why'd they make a mistake? They said the oil is pure, and really the oil is impure. That's the end of the statement and the story and Rav's commentary on it. What do we see from here? What happens in this pasuk? What gets tameh? The bread touches a dish of food. Good. The dish of food touches wine. Wine touches oil. The wine is a shlishi. The oil is a revi. Rav said they made a mistake. You know why? Because it's tameh. When do shlishi and revi'is become tameh? Regular wine and oil become shlishis and revi'is. Only which wine and oil? Kachim. Truma and kachim. Right? Truma and kachim. So this was obviously wine of kachim, like wine of truma or kachim, and oil of kachim. For example, menachos, right? I have oil, I mix it with the flour, it's in a keli, it's holy, it's going to soon be burnt on the altar, or was already burnt on the altar, the leftovers, whatever it is. This is karbanos, and it becomes tameh because it touched wine, which touched the dish, which touched the bread, which touched the sheretz. But 1 second, didn't Rav tell me before that mashken in Beis HaMikdash, the liquids in the Beis HaMikdash are not mekabel tumah at all? They're not susceptible to tumah min ha'Torah. And even the rabbis who said that it's tameh only outside of the Beis HaMikdash, but not in the Beis HaMikdash. So what is going on here? First of all, this is a pasuk in Chagai. Is this biblical tumah or rabbinic tumah? It's in the Tanakh, right? So it seems biblical tumah. That already Chagai knew that oil and liquid in the Beis HaMikdash is tameh. When? It's tameh min ha'Torah. It's tameh min ha'Torah. And he tells me liquid is not tameh. Here we see it's tameh, mamish tameh. Even if it would be outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you would say shlishi revi doesn't work. But here shlishi and revi does work because the Beis HaMikdash, and it's tameh. How can? What do you mean? Does Kohanim made a mistake? Why'd they make a mistake? Because there's tameh. So maybe you're going to tell me. Maybe you want to say, you know what? I have an idea. Chagai was the beginning of Bayis Sheni. Chagai was one of the Anshe Knesses Hagdolah. Maybe the Tumas Mashkin is not min ha'Torah. Maybe Rav is right. Biblically, nothing. But maybe some Gzeiras de Rabbanan, most of them happened during Bayis Sheni. But some could have happened in the beginning of Bayis Sheni. Could have happened at the end of Bayis Rishon. For example, Tumas Yadayim that we learned about, that if you touch a carbon without washing your hands, comes from Shlomo HaMelech. Muktzah comes before the times of David and Shlomo. So maybe already by then, the rabbis imposed tumah on liquids. And that's where Chagai was testing them. He wasn't testing them on biblical tumah. Maybe he was testing them on rabbinic tumah, and they failed. Maybe. That would work. The oil and the wine was tameh only midirabbanan. Let's say that happens. Let's say it was not a biblical exam, it was a rabbinic exam. Zolzain, right? But 1 second. Didn't Rav say that Yosef ben Yezer said that all the mashkin Beis HaMikdash is pure completely, because the rabbis also didn't impose tumah in the Beis HaMikdash. Only outside of the Beis HaMikdash. But this is talking about the Beis HaMikdash. How do I know? Because if it wouldn't be the Beis HaMikdash, the oil wouldn't be tameh. They wouldn't have been making a mistake. So it's obviously oil from kachim. But oil from kachim should be tar biblically for sure. And even rabbinically, Rav said that Yosef ben Yezer said the mashka of Beis HaMikdash is dachan, is pure. What does dachan mean? Not like Shmuel. Shmuel said dachan means it doesn't transfer. Rav said what's dachan? It itself remains pure. He's mamish undermining himself. He's mamish contradicting himself. Now you're going to tell me that what? Maybe the pasuk says it's tameh midirabbanan. You're right, and Yosef ben Yezer wouldn't work because Yosef ben Yezer says there's no tumas mashkin in the Beis HaMikdash. We explained before that the brises are not according to Yosef ben Yezer. The previous brise is that the dam becomes tameh, so this is also not according to Yosef ben Yezer. But you can't say that. You know why? Could Yosef ben Yezer argue with a pasuk in Chagai? He can argue with another Tana. He can't argue with a pasuk in Chagai. He doesn't have that authority. The pasuk in Chagai says oil is tameh, and Yosef ben Yezer says no, it's not. Zolzain rabbinic. But Rav quoted Yosef ben Yezer that the mashka in Beis HaMikdash is completely tar. So say, oh, this is a pasuk. It's not Yosef ben Yezer. He can't contradict the pasuk. He doesn't have that authority. So however you want to learn it, we're stuck. If you want to learn that it's a tumah midoraisa, it's a serious challenge. You're telling me midoraisa there's no tumah in mashka. If you want to say it's only midirabbanan, and by Chagai they already made it, you're still stuck. Because Rav quoted and said that in the Beis HaMikdash, they didn't make the Gzeirah. And you can't tell me Yosef ben Yezer has a different shit and it doesn't work with this pasuk. He can't argue with a pasuk. There's a system in halacha. No Tana in the world can look at a pasuk and say, I have a different opinion. It doesn't work that way. You can explain a pasuk differently, but in the history of Judaism, it doesn't work that way. The Nevi'im made a takana, Anshe Knesset Hagdolah made a takana in Bayis Rishon. You're obliged by it. Yosef ben Yezer doesn't have the authority to say, I'm not making the takana of Tumas Mashkin. He can't do that. He doesn't have that authority. I'm not waiting. It's nevuah, fine, but he still doesn't have the authority to argue with the Gzeira. Yeah, just let's finish the answer. I'll get answer. Says the Gemara, Midehu taima ela Rav. You're asking a question on Rav. Rav bashke beis mitbachayatone. Rav was talking about the liquids in the beis hamitbachayim. The liquids where? In the butchering section of the Beis HaMikdash. The blood and the water where they would rinse the offerings. Mashke be'mitbachayim etame. But the liquids of the Mizbeach, the wine of libations, and the oil of menachos that go on the Mizbeach, they become tamei, and they can transfer tumah midirabanan. In other words, there's no issue. There's two separate issues here. Rav spoke about mashke beis mitbachaya. We're talking about mashke bei mitbachaya. Beis mitbachaya is the butchering section of the Beis HaMikdash. Over here, they rinsed the karbonas with blood and there was water. Here, Rav said there's no tumah biblically, and the rabbis didn't impose tumah. Why? They wanted to protect the karbonas. This is where all the meat was being prepared. This is where they were skinned and prepared and rinsed. But the liquids that went on the Mizbeach, that was a different category. It was very focused. It was much less. It went on the Mizbeach. The oil that they poured on libations, the oil that was mixed in menachos, this they never dismissed from Tumah. And therefore here there's a din of Tumah midirabanon. And we understand that this can only work midirabanon, because if liquid would have been minatayra, if the impurity of liquids would have been minatayra, you can't make all these distinctions between Mizbeach and Beis HaMitbachayim. It would all be Tameh. But Chachamim can't take away a Tumah minatayra like we learned. They can't cancel it. But obviously this is all midirabanan, so there's no contradiction. Chagai was asking the Kohanim if they know about tumah dirabanan. The rabbis already imposed a tumah of liquid in their days, which included wine and included oil of karbonas that went on the Mizbeach. Yosef ben Yezer is talking about something else. Mashka beis hamitbachayim. There the rabbis didn't impose tumah, and therefore Rav is salvaged. And with this the Gemara finished, challenging Rav's explanation of the testimony of Yosef ben Yezer, and his position can be maintained with intellectual integrity without any problem. Rabbi Yaakov, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Different places. This is Beis HaMitbachayim, this is the Mizbeach itself, and we can understand the logic of it. The rabbis didn't want to just eliminate Tumah. They wanted in a place where there was so many Kohanim, there was so much action, there was so much blood and so much water, you have a whole different thing. That section, do you know how much blood there was there? Do you know how much water there was there? If that mashka would become tameh, even with Rabbanan, you would end up in a very drastic situations where kachim would be ruined. Here, you had a cup of wine that the Kohen poured on the Mizbeach. It was called Nisa Chayayin every day. And you had oil that was mixed with a mincha. Mincha took oil, he mixed it with the mincha, and he offered it on the altar, and then they baked it. It was very controlled, it was tight. And therefore, we're not so worried. If it becomes tummy, it becomes tummy. If the oil becomes tummy, it becomes tummy. Fine, you do what you have to do.
From Chagai, it's clear it was the action taking place on the Mizbeach.
Well, he says yayin and shemen. Yayin and shemen didn't apply to a regular, where's oil on a regular carbon? The mincha has oil, and wine comes with nisa chayayin. That's not beis hamitbachayim. He keeps on speaking about mashka beis mitbachaya. Beis hamitbachayim is called the butchering section, like Potiphar is called sar ha-tabachim. Tabach is a butcher. Beis mitbachayim. We're talking about midbachaya. Midbachaya is mizbeach in Aramaic. There's mitbachaya and midbachaya. Mitbachaya with a tess is tabach, is a butchering section where the meat was prepared. Midbachaya is the actual altar where everything was offered, where the fire was burning, where the wine was poured, where the water was poured on sukkahs, where the meal offerings were offered, where the karbanos were offered, etc. So that could become tamei midirabanan according to Rav and Yosef ben Yezer. Of course, according to many others, biblically, and therefore Chagai is talking about a biblical tumah. But according to Rav's interpretation of Yosef ben Yezer, it has to be only rabbinic tumah, which would mean that tumas mashkin midirabanan comes from an early stage in Jewish history, not from a later stage in Jewish history. Tumah midirabanan. Chagai was testing about a tumah midirabanan on the mizbeach, on the oil that touched the wine, which touched the dish, which touched the bread, which touched the sheretz, which was therefore a revi. Sheretz av, lechem rishon, right? Dish is sheni, and yayin is shlishi, and shemen is revi, or another food, or another meichel. That's detached water, yeah. It came. Oh no, nisach hamayim actually not. It came from a well. Oh, but now it's in a keli, yeah. Oh, now it's in a keli, of course, yeah. Yeah. According to Rav, biblically, it's never mekabel tumah, nothing. No mayim, no dam, nothing. And certainly can't transfer, it doesn't become tumah. The chiddush is that the rabbis impose tumah. Yes. According to this interpretation, we have to say that this tumah mashke b'derabbanan comes from an early stage in history. Not later, right? Because a lot of tumahs come from later. Alts b'seder? Now you can have a peaceful day, I hope.
This mashke will become a rishon if it's midrabanan.
This mashke will be a rishon midrabanan, you're right. No, only the mashke that touches a sheni becomes a rishon. Only the mashke that touches a sheni. Yeah, shlishi revi not. So the yayin touched the nazid, so it's already not.
Oh, it's already further.
Yeah. The lechem was a rishon, the nazid was a sheni. You're saying, interesting. You're saying when the nazir touched the yayin should become a rishon.
Even if it's not true.
So why is it called a revi?
It's not in Beis Hamikdash. Even it doesn't have to be in the Beis Hamikdash. So the whole kasha is not a.
Right, but the thing is that the chiddush that mashkin becomes a rishon, that's much later. That gzeira was much later.
It's not when Chagai was.
Yeah, that happened on the roof. The Gemarah says in Maseches Shabbos, the end of verse Perek, that happens on the roof, close to the end of Bayesheni. Times of Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. So you have to go hundreds of years later. For that tumah, hundreds of years later, that's why it's not equated here. That's why it's not brought into the equation here. Good question. He's asking, why is the mashke not rishon? The yayin becomes a rishon because it touched the nazid. The lechem was a rishon, the nazid was a shen. Nazid touched the yayin should jump to rishon. It's a mashke. Because here we're talking chagai. Yeah, all the rabbanon, that's not a question. That nobody argues. Right. Because there's a derabbanon and there's a derabbanon. This is an early derabbanon.
That was just for smart guys. That's for the way this is just for regular.
So he tested the Kohanim and they failed. According to Rav, they failed.
How can you have contact president of Chaim? Wasn't he was the one that invited back? He's fine.
He himself?
I'm saying the one that led everybody back. That this.
Ezra. Why he's the one who did the testing.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.